Okay, take two, everyone. I apparently like to mute my mic when we hit record for a podcast. Okay, Angela, so super fun. 100th episode. I am so excited about this because you and I are not in charge today. And I'm prepared. I'm ready. Last week I was sick. This week, I still feel like I've got my husky bar voice, like I've been smoking.
That's a good voice, dude. Not gonna
Listen,
lie.
it is. It's good radio voice. Angela's over here drinking, I'm not sure what, out of a Red Bull can.
Well, it was a Red Bull, and then I got a little nervous when I realized what we're doing because we have no control, Fran, over this episode.
No, we don't.
And I usually have an outline, and I have at least a few things in mind to say. So I'm over here like falling apart, and my can was empty, so I needed water. And all I could find was sink water. So.
You drank the Red Bull. So then you went to the bathroom here at the library.
And got some sink water just out of desperation. So I'm living my best life.
If that's not a commercial for law school, I don't know what is. You know what? Kids, go to law school, become a successful attorney. You
Here
too
we
could
are.
swill bathroom water out of a crushed Red Bull can. It looks like a really aggressive.
I had a moment. I'm going to start a GoFundMe campaign for bottled water.
I love it.
Okay. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I'm not an energy drink person. Like, that's not my thing. Coffee's going to be my go-to every time. But remember when, not that long ago, I saw a girl in our office. She had, it was called Reign, like REIGN.
It's good. I've had Reign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, remember when all these energy drinks came out, not Red Bull, it's kind of stayed true to its can and its look. But when they all got to be a little fatter and all this certain look, I felt like all the students were walking around drinking a Red Bull. Not a Red Bull, White Claw.
Yeah.
You know, and it made me nervous.
They look scandalous.
They do look scandalous. And so it's become this inside joke in our office when the students walk in. I'm like, what you drinking? They're like, Miss Fran, it's an energy drink. I'm like,
Well,
Did you know my tardiness policy? Like, if a student's late to my class, they have to bring me a caffeinated beverage. So yeah, like distractingly late, like 5, 6, 7 minutes.
That's genius.
Yeah. So a lot of times they'll bring me Kobo coffee, but sometimes they'll bring me like a Reign or a Bang or a
Those are
Bucked Up.
good.
You ever had Bucked Up? Dude, that's a nice time. There's a little like deer antler stuff in there. It makes you feel, you know.
it all tastes the same to me, though.
I enjoy them.
You do?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like coffee, so I have to turn to something.
Listen, Red Bull or go home for Angela.
Yeah.
We gotta get an energy drink sponsor here on the
For
program.
real?
I mean, we're talking about all these
Happy
brands.
100th with all the
Absolutely.
sponsors for all the brands.
Yeah,
Here
we
we
gotta
go.
level
Fran, can you believe this is episode 100?
This is super fun because I know that, you know, when you say 100 episodes, you're like, well, I don't know. That doesn't sound like a lot, but good gosh, sometimes you're like, it feels like it's been a million. But 100 is a big deal. So we are here to celebrate the 100th and to be, I don't know if interviewed is the right word, but we're back in conversation with the beloved dear friend, Kluck. Welcome back, Ted.
It's so good to be here, you guys. I had such a blast last time. And like, believe me when I say my life hasn't been the same since that episode dropped. Like, you know, Jackson, bit of a small town, but like, I feel like in the mom community in Jackson, like I'm walking a a little taller. They're looking at me a little different due to having been on your show. So
that's awesome.
I want to thank you for that. I felt like a real celebrity around here.
Here's what's really happened. They all, you know, Googled and searched you on social media and you're not there.
No.
So they're just having to like keep going back to the picture that we posted and they're like, oh yeah, that's
like, look at his
Kluck.
jawline. It's really nice. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of anybody else that we would trust to put us in the hot seat. So.
This is kind of nerve-wracking, but you know what? It's fun. It's
so fun.
It's just, you know, we're going to sit here and, I don't know, take a beating or...
No, you're not going to take a beating. I'm going to make you guys look good. I'm the point guard. I'm an assist guy tonight. I'm going to finish the night with like 25 assists and no points. And, and that's the way I want it.
All the slam dunks.
I remember a while ago, Fran, like over a year ago, sitting with the two of you in a study room in the self-same library, talking about this, right? Like talking about podcasting, talking about getting it started. And I have a lot of those meetings with people and then they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But like you guys have been consistent. You've been putting out product. You taught yourself all that stuff. And you do a tremendous job. And I think, like, truly, all kidding aside, I hear so many positive things about your show. And I feel very honored that I get to be here at number 100 to celebrate it with you guys. So I want to start with your friendship. Okay. So walk me through like the history of Fran and Angela as friends. Ange, we know you're caffeinated. All right.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of an afternoon for you. Why don't you start us off and we'll see where it goes.
I love talking about this because Fran and I met at a time when I needed some good, solid Christian friends and some community. I did not have good accountability. I had some surface level friendships, and I had prayed for some of those friendships because I didn't have them. And what's so funny is Fran and I were
and Fran was the best the Lord could do.
Okay. So here's what's funny. Fran and I were on a committee together, a team to put on an event for Joy Green.
Dude, it's all committee work.
It's all committee work with me. So we were on this committee because Joy Green was bringing Britt Nicole to our barn. And Fran was over the prayer team on this. Fran was the prayer team.
You better not knock it because I'm over here.
I'm not knocking it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fran could pray prayers that I didn't even know people could pray. It was so incredible to me. It was something I did not have in my life. And she was so upper tier in my mind, I hid from her. I thought this woman's going to take one look at me and be like, she's fake. She's nothing like I am. I hid from Fran. Isn't that funny?
So you're intimidated by Fran.
I was terrified.
Fran, what were your initial
she doesn't even remember who I
don't
was.
remember any of that. And
really?
I would have never, I'm like, why would anyone be intimidated of me? I have two things to offer and none of them are intimidating.
And
so
Fran, she did nothing to be off-putting. This was just craziness in my brain. And I really do think in hindsight, the devil would have loved to keep us far away from each other. Sure. I will just say that. But when Fran and I, so finally at the night of the event, Fran and I wind up, she's working the t-shirt table and I wind up there.
One of my two giftings.
Solid.
So I think, you know what? I just need to just go say hi.
Yeah.
So I go to say hi. And
Dude, you're a little nervous. The palms are sweating.
Nervous.
It's like middle school.
It is like middle school. Dude, making friends in adulthood
is tough.
It's almost like dating. It's almost like middle school.
Yeah,
you're trying to get that little conversation started.
Yeah.
Trying to find some common ground. So this was how many years ago?
And we get dumb things in our heads too that aren't true. This would have been 2012.
So you're full on legitimately adults at this point.
Oh.
I'm
in my 40s.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So
our friendship is barely 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to people because
I like that. I want to come back to that. But you walk over to have this little initial convo with Fran. How does it go?
Oh, we just, 90 miles an hour. And I'm like, oh, she's not scary. Mm-hmm. She asked me about, just the barn or something. I don't know. By the end of that conversation, we decided that we should did we talk about Bible study that night? Pretty soon thereafter, it was like, hey, we should do something in the barn. We have this place to gather. And the whole time I felt like my role was just to be like, hey, I have this barn. Come use it. And you do all the praying and all the teaching and the talking about Jesus because you've got that part under control and I'm not that good at it.
Yeah. So, and to be clear, this is an event venue barn. If people are new to the program, you're not mucking out stalls together.
No, right. That's a whole other big story. But yes, it's called the Barn at Snyder Farms. And we went on to do a lot of ministry. We've done 8 years of summer Bible studies for women. My husband baptized one of our participants in the pond one year. It's just been we've had big scale events. Crowder and For King and Country came for Barn Fest. Mm-hmm. And Fran's been a huge part of all of that. But that moment of just awkward, me hiding from Fran is my favorite part of our story.
Dude, that's so fascinating to me. Yeah. You guys are so good together and the vibe is so good and you're so genuine and good at bouncing off each other. I figured you'd known each other since college or high school.
Everybody thinks that.
Yeah, there was some long history to it.
10 years.
Fran, why do you think it's so hard for people our age to make friends? You know what I mean? Gosh. You're kind of set in your ways.
Yeah.
But you guys hit it off immediately. What was different about that?
Yeah. Well, I think, and this is not everybody because I am a person that I'm going to gravitate towards other people. I'm not very withdrawn. I'm not hesitant in that. So I was very open to, this will be fun. Let's be friends. What do you want to do? You've got a great barn, yada, yada, yada. But I do know that I think just regardless of a personality type or your Enneagram or whatever, however you want to classify yourself, I think just with age, we all understand how I may not have time. I'm busy. I can't take on another relationship because I don't know the health of that person. And, so you just tend to be a little bit more closed off because people really are busy raising families, doing their jobs, and they just don't have a lot of time to take that on. And or you just don't trust people. And so you're going to keep everything a little bit farther back. You're not going to let people in up close. And so all of that is constantly, swirling around in your mind as you're trying to figure out, what am I going to do with this person? What are we going to do here? But for me, it was easy because I'm just that type of person. Does that mean that at some point along the way, I, didn't wonder anything, not negative, but, just like, I don't know, may have. I don't recall that, but I just think that, I think this is I don't know if this is a cheesy Christian answer, but, sometimes you just have to open yourself up to it and let the Lord do what he's going to do with it. And if he wants to open up and move down some roads and doors and all that, great. If not, we'll pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's such a rich part of the Christian experience that if we don't avail ourselves to it, I think we're hindering our own growth.
Oh, for sure.
So like being in community, knowing and being known, it's so rich and there's so much joy in it. But yeah, to your point, I mean, we're too busy by half. The culture's too fast. Our kids are doing too much. And you have to really make it a priority, which is why I'm interested in this podcast because I've got a lot of questions, but, and by the way, the falling out that you guys have will come later. That'll come around 1,000 eps when the money is huge and there's cocaine involved and all kinds of crazy things, you guys.
Can hardly wait.
Believe you, I've been down these roads, right?
We're here to learn from you, Ted.
That's right.
Thank you for the example.
The excess, the decadence.
We know what's coming.
Don't make the mistakes I've made, you guys. Dub, I'm just kidding about the cocaine if you're listening, and I know you are. But no, like I'm interested in, because a lot of my friendships are the same, right? And I think, not to paint with too broad of a brush here, but I think for dudes, a lot of it is, you start doing a project with somebody or you start a project with somebody to like maintain a friendship and have an excuse to talk every week or to do stuff or whatever. At what point in your friendship, Ange, did you realize like the two of you have kind of a magical charisma together? At what point did you start thinking about, we should do a podcast?
Well, it never was on my radar. Let me just say that. I think when you go way, way back, I want to mention this too. The If Gathering for women has been going on a long time now. When Fran and I met, she had just gone to the first live event in Austin, and I had just hosted. It was our very first event at the barn.
Okay.
So we both had been part of that.
Yeah.
And we were really excited about what God was doing. And we point women to the local church when they say, hey, how do I make friends?
Yeah.
And that was just such, I think we'll both say that was such an important part of the glue of our friendship is it wasn't just, hey, let's be friends. I need somebody to hang out with. We were so excited about what God was stirring in us. And when we saw that in each other, it just took off like wildfire. So I think just that passion to, hey, let's get excited about what God's doing and pull other people on with us.
Yeah.
I think that's what started the Bible studies. And then from that, we did that every summer, still do. But when COVID hit, that's when it really took a turn because, of COVID. Everything got different. So that was May of 2020. Right? It all runs together. Our first episode was in August of 2020. And partly we use an app called Voxer to talk all throughout the day. That we say that's the glue of our friendship. We would send these messages back and forth. It's kind of like Marco Polo or voice text, any of those things. But we would just from the beginning of the day, to, oh my gosh, here's what I just read and what the Lord's showing me. And we would send things back and forth. And Fran's just the person that I've processed my day with for so long. And then at some point, it was just kind of like, man, wouldn't it be crazy if we could have some court reporter type this up just to have a transcript and read it back? Because it's like the narrative of our crazy, wacky, we'll go from spiritual to inappropriate and back again in 2.7 seconds.
As all the best friendships will.
That's who we are. So we always kind of had that conversation of, wouldn't it be so crazy if we could do this on a bigger scale and include more people, because we would hear each other get excited about things that God was doing. And we knew it could be encouraging to people on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
But then somewhere along the way, Fran started saying podcast, and she needs to speak to this, because this had been part of her heart before I was even involved. But when she said that, I just shut down. I was like, Fran, if I say words, I can't unsay words. And what are we doing? Like, how will we look or sound? Or
this is a scary time to be talking for a living too.
Right.
My goodness. I mean, 2023, it's no picnic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you may want Fran to talk a little bit more about like how the podcast became, but I will say this, it is doing it scared for me has been such I can't imagine not doing it, because it's, we have lived so much life out loud publicly. You know, my dad getting COVID and dying, and the way the Lord worked through his story, we were able to talk about that and process that. And that's just one moment. But we've had so many documented conversations of what God's doing, because, you know, over time, the excitement, you know, wears off a little bit, and you think, did that really happen? Did I just manufacture that a little bit? To me, that's been sweet to just kind of think back on some of those milestones. But
absolutely,
definitely, I want Fran to talk about how we got here, because it's crazy.
Well, several years ago, before we were at the friendship level that we are now, the Lord had given me, and this all sounds so like weird, you know, you're like, I don't know, the Lord told me. No, I think, you know, he had impressed upon me to start a podcast. Well, I'm also an adventurist. I'm also like, yes, why not? Like, I'm going to say yes more than I'm going to say no.
Not a Debbie Downer, if you will.
I'm not. I'm always like, why not?
Yeah.
Why would you not?
Yeah.
Unless it's against the law, you know, why would you not? And so the timing of that original thought for the podcast, it didn't happen when I thought, and in the way that I thought it was going to. But I think if you are aware of what the Lord is doing in your life, aware of what He is speaking to you and stirring within you, because when that keeps circling back, then you know for sure, okay, I'm supposed to do this, but now I'm supposed to do it with Angela, not in the context I originally thought.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I knew, because I had joked about it with her, and she was like, oh, heck no, because we know right now, because without notes, she's dying, because as an attorney, she steps into a courtroom very prepared with her words, where I'm like, I am the queen of winging it. I can wing anything. Now, do I wish I was more prepared? Yes. And so I knew that difference in us was just not friction, but I had to do some convincing of, Angela, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can speak into a microphone and not like read a script. And so you just have to start. And we started, and you encouraged us to do it, and, you know, teach yourself and learn all the things. And the Lord puts people and resources around you to use.
Yeah.
And we said, why not? And so here we are, 100 episodes later.
And let me say this. I show up with an outline and do a lot of really fun talking. Fran Thomas has learned all the hard things out of her comfort zone. She's looking at a screen right now with things. If Fran was not here to do all the production and the editing and I don't even know the words to say to make a podcast happen, she pushes play and tells me to talk, and I talk. But Fran is so phenomenal in my mind with all the ways. Like, yeah, it's fun to say I have a podcast, but she's doing all the grunt work to make it out there in podcast land.
Yeah, I think it's
That's
rare
amazing.
that somebody is both a catalyst and a finisher.
Yes.
Because sometimes the big idea person, the catalyst, has all the big ideas in the world, but they won't do the follow through to make it happen. But I really admire the way that we had that meeting. And I think initially we were talking about books, right?
Yeah,
we were talking about like, hey, maybe you guys do some writing. Maybe you do write down some of these anecdotes, some of these experiences that you've had together. So for a while it was going to be a book. And then it became this, which I think like really engages both of your skill sets really well. And Fran, I admire the way that you've like gotten right into it, taught yourself all the things. And it's amazing to get 100 episodes into something. So you listened to Ange on the way over here to the first step, right? Let's do a little self-scout thyself, little tape study. So you threw the tape in. You got to hear episode 1, Angela and Fran. Like, how has the show evolved since then? And how is it the same?
Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for
Oh my
teaching
goodness.
us a few things along the way.
If anybody dares to go back, if you're that brave and wanted to,
Please don't.
you will cringe and get some chuckles out of it. It's sweet. It's like when you look back at when you're just kind of like dorky in 7th grade. You're like, oh, well, that's kind of precious in a way I can appreciate now while also being very cringy.
Yeah.
We sounded so muffled in the microphone.
Didn't have a clue what we
did
were doing.
not. We had never done this before.
Yeah.
But it was sweet for me to go back and be reminded of this is where we started and this is why we're here and the heart and the intention. I don't ever, and I know I speak for both of us. We don't want to get away from why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's to have a conversation among friends and invite everybody in on a bigger scale of it'll be spiritual, it'll be ridiculous. Hopefully we'll make you laugh and feel like you're part of something. So
yeah, Fran. So we work at a very serious, very Baptist institution of higher learning here in West Tennessee that we both love. But I would say of all the core values kind of emanating through this place, sense of humor is not necessarily one of them.
Should be.
It should be. And you and I are doing our level best to like raise the sense of humor bar around here. But why do you think being able to laugh at yourself and even laugh at each other sometimes is so important for believers, but believers who are in community, friendships? I don't remember how we first met, but I remember that like probably 10 seconds after we were doing jokes and we were like making each other laugh, which is my favorite thing to do. And you became one of those people that if I walked into a meeting I didn't like and you were there, I would gravitate to you and just start doing bits and that would get me through it. So I know that's valuable for us. Why should it be valuable for everybody to be able to laugh?
Well, and to make fun of yourself, to not take things too seriously, to be able to laugh at these situations or yourself or whatever. That is so important because I don't know. I just think that when you can't do that, you're essentially saying, I don't know, I'm perfect. We don't make mistakes. Everything has got to be great and right and on all the time. But the world is hard. The world is broken. Our lives are messy and broken. And you have to be able to admit that, even from just, it doesn't matter what it is you've done or how you feel or what's going on around you. But I don't know. I think that as you age, you can get way too serious. And everything is serious.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think as we get older, like the propensity is to take ourselves too seriously?
I think it's just part of aging. I think it's just as simple as that. I think that because you're in a grind so much to provide for your family, to be responsible at work, to pay your taxes, to do all that horrible, adult stuff you're supposed to do, somehow along the way, we think that all that equals no fun. And so I think it's refreshing. I personally enjoy and prefer to be around people that aren't so serious. I mean, I'm not academic here. You know that. And so I just sometimes want to go up to faculty and be like, do you laugh?
Hey, listen, I want to do the same thing. As a faculty member, I would love to do the same thing.
Do you laugh because you're just so serious all the time?
Dude, there's some people I've been in meetings with for 8 years here now. Who I will go into the meeting just trying to make that person laugh, right?
Yes.
And it's a mountain that I've yet to climb. There are some I don't think I can do it.
Well, people just appreciate the honesty of your life. We're not looking for, and even as you age, maybe we somehow adopt this mindset of I'm supposed to have things figured out. As I age, well, sure, there are some things that I have figured out along the way, but there's also new things that I don't have figured out, and I'm an idiot. And I have no problem saying, I have no idea what I'm doing right now. I don't know what I'm talking about. Or is this a dumb question? Or, being terrified when you step into a room full of adults that should not be intimidating, but they are. And so I say ridiculous things about them behind their back.
I wore 2 different shoes to court and realized it in the middle of my trial.
I love it, dude. So let's do a second on that. And then I'll get back to the humor thing. So you're up there and listen, Ange, everything I know about court, I've learned from like TV and movies. So
Yeah.
like my Night Court, like growing up watching Night Court with my grandpa. Yeah, Bull.
Yeah.
And then various courtroom movies. So you're pacing around, and I envision you giving this like impassioned, speech, this defense of somebody, or you're going at somebody or whatever, and you look down and you see how different were they? Let's start
it was it was a burgundy and a black.
There we go.
Oh.
Yeah, so different.
Same style, but
different colors.
I'm rarely, if ever, on
good,
time.
Fran. That's good distinction by you.
Different colors.
To put a fine point on it, different colors.
I'm rarely, if ever, on time. I tend to think that I can get ready and get out of my house in 10 minutes or less. So it was one of those
Let me
mornings.
just say, Angela will say in the mornings at her house, and she lives in the middle of the sticks.
Yeah.
And she'll say, I've got to be in Trenton in 20 minutes. I'm like, what? You've got to go, sister.
Dude,
what
you guys,
are you doing?
That's wild. My wife is the same way. She'll be like, I have to be in Trenton in 20 minutes. And before then, I'm going to get my hair cut and like go for a walk and Marco Polo my friends. And I'm like, I don't want to be the wet blanket here, babe. But
that's me.
Yeah. So you have this moment where you're pacing around, you're doing the big like movie courtroom speech.
Oh, I am living my best lawyer
just
life.
Killing it, dude. Just murdering it. And you look down and you see the different colored shoes. What happens? Does it like catch you up for a minute? Or do you just...
Oh, yeah. I look down and I'm like, huh.
I'll be darned.
Look
and you
at
look
that.
at your client, you're like, I want you to know I'm preparing better for you than I am down here.
And I'm the one that like, my husband gets so irritated, but if I get something for $8 at Walmart and I'm wearing it that day, I want to go tell everybody, don't you love my sweater? It was $8 at Walmart. So I can't just leave it alone. I start telling people by then. I'm like, did y'all know I wore two different shoes? And nobody had really, it was not as big a deal as I made it. But it was, it was a little, it got my attention and I was able to finish. And I don't even remember the client, the case, or what happened exactly. But the funny thing is, I remember I went home. My dad was an attorney and I called and I said, you will not believe what I did. And I told him, and he just laughed and he said, let me tell you something. He said, one time I argued a case in front of the Court of Appeals and I looked down and I had on two different colored shoes.
Oh, man.
And I said, oh, my goodness. Family. So then he said, and that's not the worst of it. He said, you got it from both parents. My mother was a county commissioner. And he said one time she went to a county commission meeting in two different colored shoes. And I thought, I don't know what's wrong with my family. Clearly, that is our issue. But
that's really baked into the DNA. But if that's the worst thing about your family, that's pretty solid.
Well, and I just thought, it just goes to show you they were two of my heroes on this earth. And if that happened to them too, big deal. But we all just have to keep our sense of humor. If we can't laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
It really comes down to when you age and as you're becoming an adult, you think I've got to have it all together.
Yeah.
And I can't draw outside the lines. I can't color outside the lines. I got to stay.
The pressure off.
Yes.
Why do we do that?
It's just stupid. I don't know.
It's humbling in the best of ways because you just laugh and go on.
That's really good. And so the three of us with our various projects, me with my books and podcasts and you guys with this and all the stuff you've talked about, I think there's something really healthy about being able to laugh at something, but in the same kind of holding in the same hand the fact that you still love it, right?
Yeah.
Like we laugh about this place all the time, Fran Thomas, but we love it. And everybody knows that we love it.
Right.
And the same with the church. I mean, I love the local church, but I will make fun of it at times because you have to, because there's so much funny stuff that happens.
Right.
It's the people.
So it is. So how do you, we're doing this medium where essentially we're leaving an archive about here's what I was thinking about in 2021 and here's what I'm thinking about now. And our kids have this and ostensibly they'll listen to it. I bet none of our kids listen to our podcast, but maybe they do.
Shout out to our future grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have all this. And I want you to talk about, and both of you can do this, but Fran, I'll let you go first. Like, the value of letting your kids know that you're imperfect. Because I think our parents' generation, the temptation was very much to make a profession of faith, get your ticket punched to heaven, and then grit your teeth and try to live a really moral life and not let anybody see that you ever screw up.
Right.
And we're obviously doing it differently. We want our kids to know, what our sin struggles are, but also just what the funny things that happen in our lives are and how we could have done it better or whatever. Why is that important to you? Because you strike me in the pantheon of people around here as a very honest person. And that's another thing that I'm always drawn to in a friend. Why is that important?
Well, I think because my upbringing and the generation that I grew up. I mean, I was born in 1970, so I'm a 70s, 80s kid. And so we did have this home environment, this structure, this life that was very Leave It to Beaver, just very picturesque and perfect. And I think that, I don't know, because we've all done it. We've all swung to the other side where we're like, look at all of our imperfections. And we're not afraid to, talk to mom and dad about the harder conversations and topics, because we sure as heck didn't. We didn't talk about jack squat.
Right.
You just all gathered around and watched Peter Jennings on the news and trusted everything he said. And
shout out Peter Jennings.
Shout out
Jennings family, if you're listening. I know you are.
And we'd watch Wheel of Fortune and remember like the Love Boat was scandalous and
exciting and new. Yeah.
And so, we just lived this life that you're like, it had its good qualities, but it also had a lot of negative qualities too. And so here we are, we've swung way over here to the other side where we're like, let's just talk about it all. Let's just, let's expose a lot of things. Let's not be afraid to be honest about our lives growing up.
Yeah.
And about who we are today. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know why we've done that, but a whole generation has done that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have it either, Ted. I didn't have a safe place to process hard things with.
Interesting.
And so as an adult and then becoming a parent and working with college students, there is not one thing that anybody can tell me that is going to shock me because, and Angela's heard me say this 1,000 times, this is not being prideful. It's just part of my story, but I either did it, came up with it, witnessed it, encouraged it.
Yep.
It's a miracle I don't have a criminal record because my life was just very sinful and just riddled with poor choices and no boundaries.
If you did, I know a nice attorney. Sometimes she screws up the outfit a little bit.
Exactly.
But there's grace for that.
There's grace for that, yes. And so to find myself in a situation now where I'm like, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, I wanted my kids to first and foremost have a safe place to say, hey, Mom, can I talk to you about something? Or
totally.
I need to tell you what happened. And it's just, I appreciate it. It's so desperately needed. And I think the only reason why adults don't do that with other people, have that space for other people, is they're just scared and they don't know what to do with what they're about to be told.
Yeah, no, that's true. And the thing that you said a couple of minutes ago about having seen it or done it or encouraged it or whatever, I tell my students the same thing on day one of every class, like nothing will shock me. And I think students are drawn to people like you because they do sense that you're not judging them, but you're also willing to call sin sin. And I think it's this fine line that we walk where, it would be tempting to do the cool guy thing of, I'm never going to challenge you, or I'm never going to call sin sin. And I'm just going to affirm all your bad choices. We're not doing that, but there's a sense of we have lived some life. The Lord's brought us through some things. He's forgiven a lot.
Right.
So we're inclined then to give grace on the other side of it. Yeah. And I think that's why I think this is important because, for your listeners, maybe they're in marriages or raising kids or whatever, and it can seem really lonely and really isolating. So I think just being able to laugh with you guys for an hour every week is really healthy. And to see that there are other people out there being honest about it. So now you guys grew up like me, 70s, 80s, 90s. You mentioned that. Ange, what was the best thing about growing up back then?
Oh gosh, the best thing probably in hindsight is that we didn't have these phones and social media and know what we were missing. We were just always in the moment. You had to seek people out.
Totally.
To have conversations. And
we had to use a pay phone.
Oh my goodness.
Dude, you would have picked up that little rotary dial kitchen phone and dialed up Fran Thomas, right? If you'd known each other in high school.
Would you? Hang on, here's a question. Do you remember your home phone number from back in the day?
I do.
1,000%.
What was it, Ted? It doesn't exist anymore.
Dude, it actually is still my parents' phone number.
Okay, just kidding.
So
Just kidding.
Ted and Karen Kluck, if you're listening, I'm about to give your phone number out to the
555.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Dude, I remember my number. I remember my friends' numbers.
Oh yeah.
Like my buddy Mitch Warner, shout out Mitch Warner.
Yeah.
Bernie Burnworth. I could
Oh
like
my
dial them
goodness.
up in the 80s today. If
My
somebody had a gun
landline
in my
from
head.
20 years ago is still my Kroger Plus number. So when
Oh,
my
that's
kids go to
awesome.
put in my number, they have no idea.
Listen, this is my favorite thing. Our phone number was area code 501-972-0755.
Mhm.
That phone number does not exist anymore. But back in the day, it was a big deal when you got to have a children's line.
Huge.
Yes.
So I remember I got my own separate phone number. It was 972-5948.
Dude, did you get like business cards printed up and the
I
whole thing?
should have.
Yeah.
But I had and in the phone book.
You were in the phone book.
In the phone book, it had like my dad's name and our address
yeah.
and their number. And then right underneath it said children's telephone.
Oh,
I never had that, and I always wanted it. Fran, you're so cool.
I
That's
mean,
big,
I
you
just
guys.
thought, this is so fancy.
it is fancy. So you were getting fired up about seeing not even your name in the phone book, but
Yeah,
just children's
Just
phone.
children's phone. That's all I got. That
Is there
was me.
It's a
still
little bit of fame.
Is
It's a
there
little,
still a phone book? Is that even still a thing?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I like
don't-
to think of there being one. I like it in movies whenever there's a guy like trying to figure out a case and he like goes into a phone booth in a restaurant, like rips a whole page out of the phone book. I've always wanted to do that.
Just rip the page
Due to
out.
being Midwestern, I would never do it. I'd
Uh-huh.
immediately start apologizing, Like I can buy you a new one.
I'll
no big deal.
replace it.
Yeah, I'll replace
I'll
it.
take
But it would
back.
be some diner.
Yeah,
Mhm.
You
some
know.
kind of skeevy diner,
Yeah.
and you're in there, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
you rip it out, and then you kind of wad it up, put it in
Yeah.
your pocket. And
Those were
Oh my
good
goodness.
days.
those were good days.
Yeah.
dude.
I'm thankful that we did not have, listen, all of us are
Mhm.
thankful we didn't have
Mhm.
cell phones
100%.
back when we were
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, that would have been a
We
business.
might not have
different time.
jobs.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's
Mm-mm.
true.
Mm-mm.
So when you all were in high school, obviously you didn't know each other, but I have a friend who I met in adulthood who I now host a podcast with, and we like to sometimes. His sister went to the college that I went to,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
we were hanging out one night, and we were like, I bet we were on campus together at the same time.
Oh, that's so wild.
So in like a weird sliding doors kind of
Uh-huh.
way, like our lives
Mhm.
were intersecting even back then,
Mhm.
but we passed each other. So we like to think like revisionist history of.
Mhm.
If I'd been like walking down a hallway at Taylor in 1995 and had done like the dude thing and like
Yeah.
bumped shoulders with him and been like, you
What's
know.
up?
yeah, like would we have been friends? Like, do you think you
Mhm.
guys would have been friends in high school?
Probably. We were
Mhm.
both pretty rebellious
Mhm.
in spirit, so we would have
Mhm.
been hanging together.
Okay.
In our
Making some bad
BC
choices together?
yeah.
Yeah.
In our BC days, and also in our with Jesus days, I think we were parallel in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's good though. It comes through in the show.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the little hit of fame you got by seeing children's phone in the phone book. That fame bar was pretty low.
Yeah.
But now you're putting out like a radio program with your
Listen.
name on it every week.
Listen.
In this market, I can imagine it's been kind of a fame rocket ship from like children's phone.
with
All
with
the
all
way to-
with all 12 of our listeners, thank you, all 12 of
Yeah.
you.
Shout out to 12 listeners. You know who you are. But
That's right.
no, you have way more than 12 listeners. I've seen the numbers.
That's right.
Ange and I did a little statistical deep dive at the basketball game the other
I,
day.
I was cringing, handing him the phone, going, "Please tell me we're not terrible."
No, it was impressive.
Okay, good.
I was impressed. So that being said, like you've probably had an experience or two where you're out walking around or you're having a meal at Tulum or you're at Kroger or whatever, and people,
I've got a story.
dude, lay it
This
on
is
me. I love
crazy.
fame stories.
This is so crazy.
This is so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have 3 boys.
Yep.
My middle child, his name is Tyler. He's 25 years old.
Dude, I know Tyler. I played
Okay,
football
that's
with Tyler.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Solid dude. I
Yes, he
like
is.
him a lot. Good
we
kid.
love you, Tyler.
He
Yeah.
was in the Memphis airport, I don't know, let's say a month ago. And literally just in the Memphis airport, he's by himself.
Yeah.
I am not with him. This lady comes up to him and says, "Is your name Tyler Thomas?"
Mhm.
And he goes, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, I listened to your mom's podcast and I recognized you from pictures on social media."
Wow.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
That's wild.
I said, "Tyler, did you get her name?" No.
So if you're listening, you made our day.
yeah.
And we just randomly will get these messages from people who listen, who are in Texas or who are in Washington State. Just they'll message us and say, I came across your podcast. I was struggling with, fill in the blank and I found y'all and it encouraged me. And thank you for for having that conversation. So
Yeah.
Well, and here's the reality. Like, we always check ourselves in, what's your motive in doing this? Because our motive is just as pure and innocent as it comes. Like, we don't have any kind of like, oh, we want to become the next Ted Kluck.
we have no ambition.
It's just to
You need to set the bar higher. You can
That's
do
right.
better than this.
We're just hanging out.
We're just, trying to do the next right thing and be authentic to who we are and what the Lord has called us to do. But when these fun little moments happen, you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I also think the Lord knew and still knows it would be no good to put me in any kind of position that I cannot handle. We are all such prideful people.
Yeah, very.
And
very
any
true.
kind of ounce of, oh, look at me and look at what I've done is dangerous.
Yeah.
And so I'm just fine with our 13 listeners.
Yeah.
Well, and the few speaking engagements that have come from the podcast, the thing I love about that, we have had so much fun going into some of these little bitty churches that have a very small budget because we don't care. We don't need anything.
Yeah.
But when you get the invitation to come encourage women anywhere, and it comes out of people who listen, that is just the greatest honor for us. And it's so fun to sit in these sweet little sanctuaries. And you talk about a throwback with some of them. And it's sweet and it means so much to us. And it's just fun to see how the Lord uses whatever we're going through and then however he's growing us up, and then to be able to hand that off to them. It's just that's been one of the greatest things that's come from this.
Absolutely. Yeah. You get an opportunity to go and speak and make much of the Lord. And and you see that it's a privilege when people make you a part of their lives, even if it's just like for an hour in the car or whatever. Like, that's really special.
It is.
And it's great that you guys recognize that. So you're not like faxing riders to these churches ahead of time with all the like celebrity demands. That
purple Skittles.
What I want in my green room.
Yeah, what you want in the green room.
No.
We didn't even know we'd have a green room. That we're like the most.
Well, you want to talk
wide-eyed.
about like trying to be mature and not silly. You put me in any kind of situation where I've got to like totally act right.
Yeah. It's tough.
It's tough.
It's really tough.
I don't know if y'all have seen, there's that video or any kind of meme where, it's the two people and you can't take them anywhere and they just start laughing. You have no idea what they're laughing at, but just listening to them laugh.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
And it becomes so inappropriate.
Yes, dude.
And I love it so much, but you just have to go, get it together, Fran, get it together.
We don't need a writer. We need a disclaimer. You need to understand who you're requesting and
dude,
what
you got to talk to my wife about that because she is when you have her on the show, she's an uncontrollable laugher.
Oh, good.
So sometimes I'll get her going in church.
Oh, that's the best.
And there'll just be like a word that she thinks is funny and I'll just keep pointing at it and I'll be like, look at that. Look.
They're not going to let you sit with your wife at church.
Well, listen, it's like, I'm not going to say this right and I shouldn't probably even bring this up. But since you brought it up, Ted, there's some town in the Bible that is Shittim. And I'm going to say shittim every time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to laugh.
Hey, you know what?
Every time.
Maybe it's right.
Maybe it is right. I don't know. I'm no theologian, but
we'll get well actually on that one by some Union Bible prof whose wife listens to the program.
So
That's
sorry.
Right.
So
That's right.
You all are both married.
Yes.
And my wife recently started an Instagram. And as you know, like I'm a Luddite. I don't have social media, and like we kind of agonized and prayed over should she start this Instagram for her business, for her like personal chefing business. And we both have a pretty low view of social media, whatever. But finally she starts this Instagram and she's doing these little like charming like cooking videos and kind of getting a lot of traction and a lot of recognition. And I'm kind of looking at her a little different, like, oh, okay, good. Instagram influencer. Interesting, remember the little guy when you get famous. So as you guys have gotten now 100 episodes deep into this thing and you have gotten recognized and asked to speak places and you've had some of that like traction out in the public, what do your husbands think of it? Like, do they listen to the program?
Oh, Chip Thomas does not listen to the program.
Do you know
He's
what?
so not interested.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, that's great. And I love that you love it. But, and it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Sure.
He's busy too, trying to do his own thing. But
for sure.
My husband calls it blah, blah, blah with Fran and Angela.
Blah, blah, blah.
He
Nice.
affectionately calls it that. I doubt he's ever listened. The only time he's listened is when I tried to follow him around the house going, listen to this.
Yeah.
Because it was just something fun or ridiculous, that came out. But no,
Right.
they love us and support us in other ways, but they are not regular
Does KK
listeners.
listen to your podcast?
Dude, you guys, she listens to every word of
Good.
every podcast
Good
that
for
I do,
her.
and it makes me feel so loved.
Good for
Like
her.
I really feel supported,
Yeah.
and she's tier 1 in terms of supporting and making me feel good. And every once in a while, she'll give me a little critique. There'll be a little maybe pull back on that joke in the future.
Aw.
But
But
she's
she's listening that way.
yeah, and I know she cares
Yeah.
for me, and she's good for me in that way, and she doesn't want me to get in trouble. So
I think our husbands still love us and care
Oh,
about
yeah.
us.
They
Yeah.
do. They do.
Absolutely.
They just show it differently.
So, at what point did you guys realize? And you're both, we're all mid-career,
Mhm.
and y'all are both really successful at what you do. Fran, you're single-handedly keeping Union
Mhm.
afloat, and
Mhm.
and
Queen of admissions.
yeah, despite your sad Red Bull can with the bathroom water, you're actually doing quite well. I just want people to know that.
We're taking a picture of you in that
We
can.
really
Yeah,
need
exactly.
to.
We're gonna
It's
hold
sad.
That, gonna hold that up. But I'm always interested in this with people who create.
Mhm.
Like, at what point did you realize that you had artistic or creative horsepower that was going either unutilized in your main career, or you just had more to give?
Mhm.
Angela, we'll start with you.
When
on
you
that.
when you say at what point did you recognize you're a creative, I laugh and am like, no, I'm not. When
Mhm.
people insinuate that I'm creative in any kind of way, it just feels like I'm not.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have words. That's my blessing and my curse, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. Words and encouragement to give, and
But
funny
I-
stories to tell. Yeah.
I do think, though, in all seriousness, I think with, just like I was saying earlier, with the Voxer conversations and with us having just literally every single day. Fran was sick this past week, and I was lost as a goose because I didn't have Fran to process my everyday life with.
Interesting.
And I talk to my husband about a lot of things, but sometimes he'll say, you're using a lot of words. I think you need to talk to Fran about this.
Save it for the podcast.
Save it for
baby.
Fran or the
Yeah.
podcast. But when you just can feel that it's spilling over and it's encouraging and relevant or just relevant. Maybe it's not encouraging. Maybe it's, hey, I'm struggling with this and I'm feeling a little stuck here. And
Yeah.
and Fran pointed out something that maybe could help somebody get unstuck. So
Mhm.
I think that's where, goodness knows we have plenty to do. It's
Yeah.
not like we sat around and said, how do we fill our
Right.
time?
Right.
But for us, I can't imagine not doing it. There's no doubt in our minds that this is a great outlet and
Yeah.
that we're using our gifting.
Yeah.
I think too, that, I think creativity looks a lot of wonderful ways.
Mhm.
And I think what can happen when the Lord especially wants to create, he is the creator and he can take, something out of nothing. But there's also your willingness to be a part of that creative process. And Angela knows I love a process.
Mhm.
I love the beauty of something being developed.
Yeah.
And you got to be patient. You got to hang in there because it's real easy. I think however you think of yourself as creative, if you're to scale it and say, I'm more of an 8 and Angela's more of a 2, on a creative scale. But
Wow. Too.
Or a
I know.
1.
That hurts a
well,
little bit.
Yeah,
we
I'd
know
have-
we know
yeah.
each other
Yeah.
well enough. I know I can say
Mhm.
that.
Oh, 100%. I'm thinking you're generous at a 2. Thank you, Fran.
But, anything that you want to do, whether you want to make something, start something from scratch, create, build, develop, whatever the process is, you've got to be patient because
Mhm.
I have said over and over and over in different places and seasons of ministry and opportunities that I've been involved in, I would quit
Mhm.
after a certain amount of time because it just gets hard.
Yeah.
It just gets hard. And so the importance of having the right people around you to keep, encouraging you to keep doing the hard thing because it is hard. There are
Mhm.
definitely days and weeks and seasons where you're just like, this is awesome. This
Yeah.
is so
Mhm.
much fun. And then life will happen or you're just tired or you're not
Mhm.
feeling it. And that doesn't mean stop. It
Yeah.
just means this is where we are in the process and how do you adjust? And, it's just that's the beauty of it. And I've said this before, I think on the other episode with you, Ted, is that I worry about, the 20-somethings who want things instantly and they want to they want to be creative and they want everything so quick and fast. Remember the pancake story?
Yeah.
That, you can't be afraid of those first few pancakes being all wonkety and misshaped and weird. And you just got to hang in there. You've got to keep going. Don't quit too soon.
Yeah. And that's why I think in a great way, there will always be a place for college. And we do a lot of hand-wringing around here about the economy or population or higher ed tanking or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, if you're providing a place for people to practice and to try things and to see processes through to the end, whether it's in a chemistry lab or a newspaper room or whatever or an athletic team, right? There's a lot of joy in seeing that through. So I know our time's getting short. I have a couple little rapid fire questions for you guys.
These make me nervous. Angela goes first.
Yeah, a bit of a deal. Let's be on the journey together though. We need some trust in the room.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
This only works if you trust me.
Okay, I do trust you.
It's impressive to me how you guys have like you started your show and then you immediately start like pulling these celebrity guests, which is impressive. That's big. And like, who was making the ask on that? Typically.
It depended. It depended. I had some connections with some people that I'm telling you, if you're halfway paying attention to what the Lord is doing in your life, He is constantly adding value to your life. And a lot of times it's coming through other people. And you don't know exactly what He's going to do with that. Yeah. But some of our early guests were just connections, friends that I had made years ago, back when we all had blogs. Remember that, Ted?
Yeah, some of us still do.
Yes.
According to some people.
According to some people, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there would be some of that. But then Angela, I would also like, I'm like, you sound a whole lot better in an email and with words. Will you email so-and-so and ask them if they'll be on the podcast? Because I just don't have it in me right now.
And I'm a connector. I love that. I love convincing people they're my best friends. So.
I've seen your email work. It's solid. So as you think through like the roster over the first 100, favorite celebrity guest that you've had? Fran?
Ted Kluck.
Let's go. You guys, I kind of fish for that,
That one was not coming out of my mouth.
Oh,
Angela.
Wow.
I think what's fun about that, I think that I would instantly say Sophie Hudson. She is a writer and a speaker. And I've known her for a long time and have watched her develop and grow. Yeah. And she's just been also that person that like told me how to do some technical things. And I just appreciate her availability because, Ted, you can become famous, Kluck. And, people need you or want to ask you things or they need your help. But she was always willing. It was always genuine. And shout out to Sophie Hudson. She's just an ultimate dream.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lisa Whittle comes to mind, too. She was just very powerful. And Sharon Hottie Miller wrote a book called The Cost of Control. And interestingly, Fran could not be part of that interview. And Sharon hit every single one of my issues. It was like a therapy session. And it was wonderful and terrible, but it was what I needed. So to make it about me for a minute, like that, that was the one that I was like, oh, this is
therapy. You're swiping that insurance card on the way out.
It was like, oh, great. Everybody listening will really benefit from this conversation. And I felt like I had been spanked, but it was so good.
Yeah, that's awesome. You love it when that happens.
Yeah.
So we mentioned high school. We mentioned the 70s and 80s. Did you guys have, I'm just envisioning all of us in high school together in the 90s. Did y'all have big hair? Did you have the big teased up 80s high school hair?
Aquanet hairspray. Can still smell it to this day. Then I went through this stage. Yes, like that big hair. Everybody looked the same. Everybody had that big hair. And then like my junior year, no, I don't know when this was. I could have it backwards. At some point in time in high school, I cut it all off.
Whoa.
I'm going to have to dig out the picture and show y'all.
That'd be interesting to see.
And just totally rebelled. And it was horrendous.
We need that for the Instagram.
Oh, it was awful.
Dude, was this like a black eyeliner kind of angry political
Joan
face
Jett?
for you? Or Joan Jett?
Kind of a Joan Jett thing. Yeah. And I don't know what I was thinking, but dang, it was one of those where you're like, well, I completely regret that, but it'll only take me 12 years to grow that back out. But
I went to a party last Saturday night, didn't get got in a fight. Was that Joan Jett?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it sounded like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It ain't no big
It ain't
thing.
no big thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. What about you? Big hair?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Rave hairspray for me. Thank
Rave,
you. And
yeah.
a big curling
Shout
iron.
out show sponsor Rave Hairspray. I'm sure they're no longer in business.
No.
They are.
Long got with a banana clip.
Oh, right
the
on.
banana clip.
Favorite
Mhm.
musical artist in that era?
Oh my gosh.
Guns
Angela, you go
N'
first.
Roses was.
Oh.
I had the room that scared one of my sisters. The other one was not so terrified. But
Yeah.
every square inch of my wall was covered in heavy metal posters.
Wow.
Anthrax, Guns N'
Dude,
Roses.
we need to do a whole app on 80s metal because I was like that too. I love that stuff.
But I'm over here going, all I can think about is Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
I did have a Michael Jordan poster amongst all my heavy
all
metal headbanger stuff.
I was a cheerleader, so it was always based on what is your performance? What's your
Yeah.
halftime show?
Uh-huh.
What song? And I just remember we did a lot of Michael Jackson.
There you go. So you're moonwalking in the room,
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
by yourself in front of the
Yeah.
mirror, trying to see if you can pull it off.
I remember
Yeah.
when Thriller, the video, came out.
I do too.
And we all
Mhm.
were hovered around a TV for the
Mhm.
16-minute.
Did you guys have MTV growing up? Were you allowed?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
We had that cable box where you had to push the button to get to
Yeah.
the different channels.
See, my parents kind of frowned on it. But then we got cable like when I was in high school or whatever. I would watch it with my finger on the button. And Ted and
Rebel.
Karen, if you're listening, and I knew you are.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I watched half of like a Paula Abdul video 75 times.
Straight
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh, I
Straight
loved
up.
Paula Abdul.
Mhm.
I loved her.
I bet
Those
Fran
was-
could do all those moves.
I
Those
bet
were
she could.
the 80s music,
Mhm.
whatever genre.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
just, there's nothing like it.
No, nothing like it.
Yeah.
They don't make it like that anymore. So, Ange, favorite track off of Appetite for Destruction? Guns N' Roses.
Oh gosh.
Just
It's
rips
like
top to
choosing my
bottom.
favorite child.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't pick one.
You ever broken down the lyrics to Welcome to the Jungle?
Oh.
It's a really
It might-
seedy song. He's like a jungle concierge.
Mhm.
I was gonna
He's like
say-
welcoming you to something that's really terrible.
I feel
My
like all of
son-
that music, was so inappropriate. I don't know
Oh.
that song was or wasn't.
Oh, they
But
all
you know
are.
how they'll go back and you'll see now like this is what the words were and this is what that meant and you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh my gosh.
Well,
Yeah.
and my son loves all this stuff. So he's
Yeah.
drumming a lot. I'll come home and before I'm out of my car in my driveway, I can hear the Guns N' Roses flying out of my house and he's
Yeah.
drumming along to it.
Dude.
And you kind of cringe like, oh goodness.
You
I
do,
hope
but
he doesn't know the lyrics like I didn't know.
Isn't
the
it
lyrics.
gratifying that like they are resonating with your music and that creates like a
Yes.
massive point of connection?
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
have
It's
so
super
much fun in the
Yeah.
car.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And
Yeah.
you guys, I've had so much fun
Oh,
on
Ted,
this podcast.
This is so fun.
I'm again honored and thrilled that you let me be a part of your 100th.
Thank you for being here.
We could do this all day long.
I
yeah.
know.
Like, truly,
Listen,
but-
we're not, hurting for things to talk about.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
can I go on record, full circle moment, and say Fran is not scary or intimidating? I was
She's
totally
gonna be
wrong.
worried
about
about
all
it.
those
Just gotta run it
things.
back
I
to-
know. I got to
yeah.
run it back and say, you know what, Fran? I totally had you
Yeah.
pegged wrong, and I'm so glad.
Oh. Well, this was fun, everybody. I was
was.
going to say happy birthday, but that's not it. It's just happy 100th episode,
That's a
Angela.
lot to celebrate. Thank y'all for
It
hanging
is.
with us and just listening and
Mhm.
encouraging. We hear so many encouraging things. Every time y'all reach out, send a message. It really does matter. We read every single one of them and it
Yeah.
means so much.
It is fun. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for listening to another episode of Rambling Through Everyday Life with Fran and Angela. Ted, we'll see you around.
I hope so.
Stay out of trouble, everyone. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you next time. Have a good day. Bye.